Wall Street has tumbled overnight, sending US markets officially into bear territory. The local market is poised to follow, with the ASX 200 expected to plunge at the open. Joining us live from the ASX in Sydney is our business reporter, Edward Boyd. Ed, investors are essentially concerned the US Federal Reserve will need to lift interest rates more rapidly than expected, and this is all trying to get inflation under control.
Late last week, the US inflation numbers came in, Laura, and it was at a new 40-year high of 8.6%. So the US Federal Reserve, one of the things it can do to bring down inflation is to lift interest rates. So there's an expectation now that the US Federal Reserve will raise rates by 0.75%, 0.75%, later this week. So that'll come out on early Thursday morning, our time. We'll get to see the results of that meeting. But there's a big fear that if the US Federal Reserve lifts interest rates by too much, it could actually trigger a recession, because there could be Americans that can't afford to pay off their mortgage. They'll then need to sell their property, could be sold potentially at a loss, and it triggers a sort of similar thing to what we saw in the GFC back in 2008, 2009. So there were a lot of nervous investors overnight in the US selling shares in response to those inflation numbers and ahead of this US Federal Reserve interest rates meeting later this week. We can put up what happened on the markets in the US overnight. You can clearly see huge falls across the three major indices. Dow Jones down about 2.8%, S&P 500 down almost 4%, and the Nasdaq down about 4.7%. So the Nasdaq, that's technology stocks, and the S&P 500, they're both now in bear market territory, which is when an index loses more than 20% in value from its height. The Dow Jones is almost in bear market territory as well. It's getting pretty close. So it was a tough night overnight for US markets, and they've really been on the downwards trend for the last 4 or 5 days, trading days in a row, Laura, and it's probably going to continue as we get closer to this US Fed Reserve meeting on Thursday morning.
Well, the ASX opens in less than an hour. It's all green behind you at the moment, but are you expecting that to turn red pretty quickly?
That will turn red pretty quickly. So yeah, the screens are all green now because we're not trading. As soon as it starts trading at 10 o'clock, we'll get to see those share prices rebalance, and there'll be a lot of red on the screen behind me. The expectation this morning with SPY futures was that ASX was going to fall more than 4% at the open. However, in the last sort of 40 minutes or so, ASX futures are pointing to a negative around the 1.6 to 1.8% mark. So it's not looking as bad as it was just an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, when we were expecting a fall of more than 4 to 5%. But it's still going to be a big fall for the local market this morning. ASX 200 will clearly open down. All US sectors really plunged last night, so expect sectors across our market to fall again today. So it's going to be a tough day for investors, and it's going to probably be a tough couple of days as we get to this US Fed Reserve meeting and see how US stock markets and our stock market react to Chairman of the US Fed Reserve, Jerome Powell.
Okay, Ed, I guess we will check in just over an hour. Thanks so much.